This is Oft Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Oft Off Topic is... the second half of our episode on that chaotic scamp, John Waters. In the first half, we discussed his life, from fetus to pink flamingos. In this episode, we pick up right after that, talking about his movie Female Trouble and the rest of his career. Enjoy. 1974's Female Trouble would be Waters' next movie, and it's one of his personal favorites, actually. This is the movie where Divine gets angry over the fact her parents didn't get her some cha-cha heels for Christmas, and thus runs away from home and goes on a crime spree with the hopes of getting the death penalty. Apparently there's some, urban legends on what cha-cha heels actually are, and a big mystery of, what are cha-cha heels? Nobody knows what cha-cha heels are. I just assumed it was kind of shoes you'd wear for dancing the cha-cha or something. I don't know. But
I guess they never explain?
No, they never do. Just at the very beginning of the movie, Divine opens up the Christmas present. She's like, I wanted my cha-cha heels. And Dad's like, good girls don't wear cha-cha heels. Like, I wanted my cha-cha heels. And then basically just goes on a crime spree. And then all of a sudden kind of decides she likes the fame of being a criminal, and eventually goes for the ghost stone and is like, I'm going to win the Oscar for being a criminal and get myself the death penalty. And eventually, Divine does get the death penalty.
Well, there you go.
Yep. And Divine is super happy and then be like, yes, I finally made it. I've done what every criminal wants. I will go down in my prime and I will be remembered for all time as being one of the greatest criminals ever. John Waters wrote this as kind of a parody and a spoof back then, but nowadays with all the true crime stuff, he's like, this feels like it's less of a parody and more of a could be happening right now sort of deal.
Right?
Yeah.
I bet you the cha-cha heels were what was in the suitcase in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, I bet you're right. Those are the famous cha-cha heels. What was the case? Do you know how many people died for these?
Too many to count.
Yeah, right. This movie basically came about and this was the beginning of John Waters' fascination with crime and true crime stuff, because he started visiting Tex Watson in prison of the Manson family. Got to know him pretty well. In fact, he sat in on the Manson family trial too, and was one of those, back in the day where you can still do it now, but just go sit in on a trial and be one of the guests, just watch.
What?
Yeah. Back in the day, or actually you can still kind of do it now, you could go to a trial and just sit in on a trial and watch.
Oh,
it. Yeah. Apparently, John Waters was really big into that back in the day. He even attended the Manson family trial. He was also at the Patty Hearst trial, the Hanafi Muslim massacre, and even Watergate. He sat in on all those trials. A little side story. Apparently, back then, there was a little whole subculture about going around and watching these trials. For the Watergate one, it was the hardest one for him to get into. Only 10 slots for viewers to come sit. And as he was sitting in a room while they were announcing who was going to get picked for the trial, I guess everybody likes to brag about the biggest trials they've been to and the most interesting ones. And John Waters like, I've been to Manson. Other people are like, I've been here. I've been there. Some little lady in the corner spoke up. She was like, I was at Nuremberg. And everybody went, oh, and hushed up. Yeah. They're all like, ooh, you wait. She's good. She's been around. Ooh. So found that a little bit fun. He says court TV basically killed this subculture, though, because now you can just sit at home and watch the trials.
Oh, yeah. Why do all that?
Yeah, he does actually still like to go to trials every once in a while just to see what's up. Go hide in the audience or the crowd. But a lot of times he will get noticed. One time even a lawyer was like, look, I knew John Waters might show up for this one. We'll talk about that trial in a few minutes, actually. Next film up, Desperate Living. This was made in 1977, and this would be the final movie in what's known as his Trilogy of Trash, which was Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, and Desperate Living. More or less like the big, quote-unquote, mainstream movies that got him going at the time, or his most mainstream movies. This, however, was the only one of the trilogy that did not feature Divine in it. Real quick side note, Eraserhead came out at the same time as this movie, and John Waters and David Lynch started doing pressers together and actually became very good friends during this time, and like to hype up each other's movies.
Neat.
Yeah, a David Lynch, John Waters movie would be interesting. I'd watch it.
David Lynch is obnoxious. His voice is obnoxious.
Who? David Lynch?
Yes.
Really? I like his voice. His weird German, I'm going to murder you while I sit here and lecture you.
Wait, are we talking about the same person? The
high-pitched? Oh, maybe. No. I think of Werner Herzog. My bad.
You are thinking of Werner Herzog.
I'm thinking of Werner Herzog.
I'm a German. Deep German. That's the exact opposite of David Lynch.
Yep. I don't know why I thought Werner Herzog. David Lynch. I do not know David Lynch's voice, actually. So I will believe you that he has a very high-pitched, annoying voice.
Oh, no. Google it real quick. It's worth listening to.
Okay. Hold on.
You must listen to the terror of his voice.
Oh, he did. He almost sounds like a Peter Lorre sort of thing. Yes, and welcome to my kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, that's not a good voice.
and he apparently also had a musical career. It was like the whole shtick was it was awful.
What's
So
the matter with kids these days?
right,
Yeah. Desperate Living involved Meek Stoll in the lead role, playing a lady known as Peggy Gravel, a suburban housewife who has a nervous breakdown, smothers her husband, and goes on the run with her nurse. They wind up in a weird shanty town called Mortville, and weirdness ensues. Yeah, it's actually a very kind of strange move from the clips I saw. When they get to that shanty town, it's run by that Edie chick, I believe, and she kind of runs it with like an iron fist and makes people do weird stuff for her amusement. And
chick.
yeah, the one that sat in the crib and wanted her eggs.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Yep. The movie was overall received well, other than some lesbian groups denounced this film for its portrayal of lesbians and even managed to get blocked at some theaters. They did not like the militant lesbian aspect that was in parts of it, I suppose. But nowadays, apparently in a weird twist of fate, those same lesbian groups actually love the movie and will show it on college campuses and be like, hey, look at the lesbian lifestyle. So,
Of course they will. Because
yeah, I know. Back then it was like...
Yeah, time passes. They pull the stick out of their ass. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Oh, here's another random John Waters tidbit. He actually became good friends with Andy Warhol, and after Andy Warhol was dead for a documentary, he got to go through Andy Warhol's personal porn collection. So there's mostly 70s porn, and there's a lot of mullets in it. And when you got that many mullets in erection in a porn, it kind of looks like classic art more than actual pornography.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at this. I mean, we went to the Chicago Art Museum, and there were some just naked people standing around. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And then there was like several shots. It's like, of a guy, like there were a couple guys, and they were a face of an orgasm. And I'm like, was this actually while they were like there, or is this like, oh, there's like, oh yeah, this is what my face is make. But I'm like, well, seeing how this art, I'm willing to bet like $1 million. This is like, no, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it probably was. And then right after they made that face, it was like, can I get my money and go now?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, some of those. I mean, I don't know. I appreciate photography. I think it is, very whatever. But like, I don't know. Maybe because I'm I don't take pictures. I actually make my art. I'm not saying mine's great at all, but just still, it's like, I don't know. You do need an eye for pictures, but just sometimes it's like, I went through the museum, like, they just took a picture of a building.
Yeah, and not even really like necessarily a good one. It was like,
yeah, and this one's like, this is just some lady standing there.
Yeah.
I don't even see, like, it wasn't like
artistic lighting or nothing like that, or contrast of colors, or hey, they use a weird aperture on this to make it look
I didn't see any kind of perspective thing, nothing. It was just like, there's a lady in a room that took a picture of her, and it's in black and white.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Who was actually a pretty good artistic photographer? John Waters. He actually has done art exhibits for it. And he has a whole art exhibit at the Baltimore Museum. We'll go into that in a little bit as well. And also, Warhol and John Waters were actually friends, and Warhol did watch all of John Waters' movies, and he described them as, they're better to talk about than they are to watch.
Awesome.
Yep. And John Waters says, I completely 100% agree with that. Yep. He's right. Those early movies, better to talk about than they were to watch. 1981 sees Polyester, and that is Waters' first movie that basically flirted with mainstream success, showing up in a lot of theaters and more than just the underground people watching it. Divine was back in the starring role for this one, as was Edith Massey, the crib chick, but unfortunately she would pass away a few years after this, so this was her last movie. This movie satirizes suburban life in the early 1980s, and it was the first Waters movie to garner an R rating instead of X or unrated. And it is actually most famous for this is the movie with the Odorama cards. You heard about those?
Odorama cards?
Odorama cards.
Am I assuming they smell?
Yep. So you see, there's a film critic a while back who said of John Waters, if you ever see John Waters' name on a theater marquee, run to the other side of the street and hold your nose, because there is filth inside. And John saw that review and said, I'll give you something to smell. So he went to 3M and said, I want some scratch and sniff cards with these smells on it. And when you're watching the movie, there'll be like a little thing in the corner. It'll be like, scratch and sniff spot number 1 now. And you get a smell what the person is smelling on the screen. Naturally, since it's John Waters, the smells weren't always what you expected. Sometimes they were, sometimes they were a surprise. The smells included roses, flatulence, model airplane glue, and fun fact for this one, for the reissue they did for the Blu-ray, the studio refused to do model airplane glue because they figured it would get kids huffing glue. Pizza, gasoline, skunk, natural gas, new car smell, dirty shoes, and air freshener.
Air freshener. I mean, that's really vague.
It is very vague, but I mean, that's what the listing said. That's the actual listing from 3M, I think, on what the things were. I don't know. Maybe it was one of those where the chemical name was air freshener, but the actual movie scene was like clean outdoors or something. I don't know. Johnson he still has tons of boxes of these Odorama cars just laying around his house, and occasionally he'll be walking by one of them, and apparently you can still very much smell the scratch and stuff. He said they still work after all these years. And people actually still show up and have him sign them too, like the OG ones, and he has no idea people have held on to him that long.
Yeah, that'd be like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's his reaction too. Somebody will come over to the OG one, he'll be like, "Whoa, nice job," and sign it and send them on their way. And in 2003, the Rugrats movie actually copied the Odorama idea. They even copied the logo and the formats of the cards, and this kind of irritated John Waters, so he went to sue the Rugrats. And that's when he learned New Line Cinema had let the patent lapse on those cards, so Rugrats owed him nothing. New Line Cinema was like, well, I mean, think of it as an homage. You like homages. And he's like, I like money better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Homages are great, but
yeah, give me the money. Gimme. Oh, and here's a little fun side thing. 1986 rolls around. Playboy gives John Waters a chance at one of his life's dreams. He gets to interview the man, the myth, the legend, Little Richard, the man he loved so much and wanted to crawl on up inside and be part of him. Little Richard at this point was living in a hotel for various reasons they didn't really go into. And I don't know if it's money problems or just sometimes people live in
various reasons.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was. John shows up, does the interview, and the interview actually started out good, turned out all right, until like the very end when all of a sudden Little Richard got very serious and handed him a it's kind of like a non-disclosure agreement. Basically, it's a contract saying, hey, Little Richard has all rights to edit and change anything in this article he wants. Basically, he gets to write the article instead of John Waters. Mm-hmm. This came about because I guess Little Richard had been in some scandals recently, and he was very distrustful of the press and just assumed everything was going to be a hit piece. And John looks at the paper. He's like, I can't sign this. Playboy's not going to let sign it. I don't want to sign this because, I've got journalistic integrity and all that jazz. And Little Richard literally looked him dead in the eye and said, you are not leaving here until you sign this. And apparently what happened was a several hour long tense standoff between John Waters, the Playboy editors, and Little Richard's lawyers, and some of the Playboy lawyers too. And I guess after a lot of talking and arguing, eventually Little Richard finally agreed to let John Waters do the article he wanted. And John said the whole thing was an absolute nightmare and could not have gone worse.
That sucks.
Yeah, that really does suck. He was all excited. Apparently everything was great. And like right at the end of the interview, Little Richard got super serious, got this kind of mean look on his face, like, sign this now. So that turned out to be...
If you're going to do that up front. Don't wait till the interview's over. They go in and say, hey, look, this is what I need. If you want this interview, we're going this way. That way, John can either A, go, oh, I understand your point of view. I don't work that way. More power to you. Really nice to meet you. Big fan. Bye.
Exactly. But probably in Little Richard's mind, he was probably like, well, if we do it this way, then you'll have to sign it. Then I get to write the article. Maybe. He thought he found a loophole. He's like, this is genius. But nope. Thankfully, John Waters stuck to his gun. Good job, John.
Well, then if you're trying to get a puff piece out of this, not necessarily a puff piece, but like if you're trying to have people take you seriously, like don't do something before they leave that's gonna sour the whole fucking thing.
Yeah, right. Because if all of a sudden I'm dealing with that, I'm going from like, hey, I'm gonna write this nice fun article, to be like, oh my god, how do I translate this now?
Yeah, now it's like, okay, this went from like a fun piece to now this is the piece.
Yeah, your opening line goes from I got to interview my hero Little Richard to that idiot Little Richard or whatever you want to do. Yeah,
it's like now it's this dude is trapped me in a hotel room instead of like, oh, we had a pleasant conversation with Little Richard.
Yeah, it would be fun watching Little Richard and John Waters get into a fight too. Now that I think about it. Well, I think Little Richard's a little bit bigger than him.
I mean, honestly, I know the only thing I know about Little Richard is
piano riff, woo.
Yeah, woo, and then fucking oh man, what was it? Hollywood Squares.
Oh yeah,
it's like
that
a
few times.
Yeah, like just basically those kind of game shows where, or not just like game shows, but it's like those old shows back in the 80s and
Yeah,
90s
yeah.
where
When
like,
a
oh,
flamboyant
remember
black man
me?
was a novelty kind of thing, it's like, ooh, look at
Yeah,
that. He's a confirmed bachelor, ladies.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
yeah,
confirmed bachelor. He's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like
You
he's
remember when that line was all over Hollywood for like, oh, he's gay, but he's a confirmed bachelor, like Liberace.
yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, huh.
Like refused music due to the time of like, dude.
It's like
I hate
I
to
think we
say,
know what's going on here.
yeah, they were more than friends. I hate to burst your bubble.
1988 comes the movie that would ensure John Waters would have some financial stability in his life. That movie is Hairspray. Everyone assumed since this was John Waters, it was going to be a super raunchy movie and it was going to get an R or an X rating. It actually got a PG rating, which shocked the hell out of John and pretty much everybody involved in the movie. Everybody was like, ooh, this is going to get an R rating. In fact, even the studios were like, hey, man, this PG, this is like going to be seen as a family movie. This could ruin your career. You need to throw in some swear words and let's try to get this closer to an R. That's actually what they said to him. Yeah, they were like, hey, man, you're John Waters. You're known for trashy stuff. We want more trash. We don't need a family thing. Try to, trash it up a little bit. But the fact it was a PG rating is how it went on to be a family musical and get into high schools all across America as a high school play. And because of that, John Waters says it is his most devious film he has ever made because he got a movie about gay empowerment and interracial dating into some of the most conservative religious parts of America. And you get what he's saying, too. I mean, there's a lot of really conservative people who love Hairspray, even though it does kind of have some, tolerance and love subtitle. Actually, I've never seen it, but I'm just going by what people have said.
You're like, oh yes, I remember the time I watched this. Oh, by the way, I never watched it.
Well, I mean, the description I've read of it is basically Ricky Lake dances away hate and racism in Middle America back in the 50s or something like that. This movie did actually have one of his biggest star-studded casts so far, though, with Ricky Lake, Divine, Debbie Harry, Sonny Bono, and Jerry Stiller in it. This movie, though, didn't do good in the theaters, like a lot of his stuff. But it did. As soon as it got released in the early 90s on VHS, boom, that's when it took off. People loved it as a rental.
See, that happens a lot. It's like, oh yeah, this didn't do very well. I mean, because I still understand how. Let me reverse. So, I understand how like movie companies will be like, oh, okay, opening weekend, blockbuster, no blockbuster, blah blah blah. But you just can't dismiss a movie until after it's been out for like DVD or VHS. For a while.
Yeah. Too many like studios just want immediate gratification. They're like,
right.
Boom, it's got to make all this money, otherwise we just scrap it.
I mean, because let's be real, like the audience for Hairspray weren't going to movie theaters, and a lot of the audience for Hairspray probably couldn't really like at the time, be let their freak flags fly. Now, I mean, in certain areas of the country you still can't, but by and large you can.
Yeah, close you can get some of those bad areas too is basically Hairspray, more or less, from what I could tell. One downside about this movie, this would be the last movie Divine would ever make, as he would pass away 3 weeks after release. And you know what's actually kind of an extra bummer? The day after he passed away, he was supposed to show up on the set of Married with Children. He was going to play an openly gay uncle on the show and be one of the first openly gay characters on TV.
Oh, boo.
Yeah, I know. That would have been kind of cool to see him in Married with Children. So, Divine has been buried, and all the original Dreamlighters have bought plots next to his grave so they can be buried together. They call it Disgraceland. Fans make the pilgrimage to Divine's grave, and they leave gifts and notes. And one time, John and his friend showed up, and somebody had scrawled Satan all across Divine's headstone. And without missing a beat, John's friend said, "Aw, they misspelled satin."
Wah wah.
Yeah. This movie was actually inspired a little bit by events of John Waters' youth. When he was a teen, he was on the Buddy Dean show. You remember those old dance-a-thon shows that they would have where a teenager would just go out there and just dance for the camera, and they'd be like, "Ooh, these two are the winning couple." Yeah, they were all the way.
Or whatever.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. This was back in the 50s. It was Buddy Dean was a local Baltimore show, and everybody would be dancing for prizes. And John Waters got kicked off that show for dancing a dance called the Dirty Boogie. And with the name like the Dirty Boogie, it sounds like it'd be a sexually obscene kind of dance, but no, actually, that's not why I got kicked off. It's because it was a black people dance. And apparently, if you were caught doing the black people dance on the TV at that time, they kicked you off. John Waters did say, however, that's kind of what killed the Buddy Dean show, because all the other dance shows started integrating except for Buddy Dean, and he went under as one of the first ones.
Good. Fuck him.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. Side story. When John Waters went to South Korea to see a production of Hairspray, he was horrified to see people in blackfaces doing the roles of the black people. He asked why the blackface, and they responded, "We don't have black people here, John."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
His response was, "Can't you find a different minority you got around here?" So there's that little fun aside.
Yeah, I mean, and he has a fair point right back to him. You know,
Yeah,
it's like, well, it doesn't have to be black. Just who's the
find,
minority you have
find a
around here?
Filipino or something. I don't know. Speaking of, we were talking about John in being a big fan of crime and going to trials and everything. And in the 1980s, he actually started going to prisons and holding classes to help rehabilitate inmates and teach them things, including, like filmmaking classes and other such stuff. One time, he decided to show his class pink flamingos, which freaked out a lot of his hardened criminals and got him called like a sick pervert by some of them. He believes that is one of the biggest compliments he's ever gotten in his life.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and through this, he also became great friends with Leslie Van Houten of the Manson family. And you might not have heard, she got paroled recently, and he actually has a lot to do with that. His point being the fact that when she did the murders, she was 19, and that was 53 years ago, and, 53 years can change a person.
I mean, and also she was a poor, stupid 19-year-old who was manipulated and drugs. I mean, she
apparently she. Go ahead.
Oh, so what she did was terrible, and of course she needed jail time. But like, they're keeping her there forever. That's just not.
Yeah, and apparently she didn't actually even kill anybody, but she did like mutilate a dead body or something afterwards. But she didn't do any actual killings. But apparently she has been a model prisoner since almost her entire time in there and has helped other prisoners. And you know what? Good for her. Sounds like she deserves a second chance. And John Waters is trying to do that with other prisoners too. He's like, hey man, death penalty and life in prison is stupid. We're supposed to be a reformation system. You're supposed to go to prison, get reformed, get back out and be a good citizen. We don't do that anymore. We skip the whole reformation part. We just throw people and lock them up and possibly make them better criminals if they ever get out.
Yeah, and in all honesty, that's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, it really is. Because technically, you're supposed to go to prison and learn a skill, then go, be a carpenter or something. Like, Jesus. Yeah, I know. Our prison system has failed us. Back to John Waters and the world of movies. 1990, John Waters would team up with Johnny Depp and bring us the musical romantic comedy Crybaby. This film was about a group of delinquents known as the Drapes and their encounters with the rest of the town, or the Squares as they're called. And like some West Side Story romance, love, snapping, chicken races happen. Kind of like a 50 Greaser movie, basically. This movie was actually inspired because his neighbor was a greaser back in the day, always out in the front yard working on his hot rod, wearing the leather jacket and the white shirt. And that's another one of those guys John Waters always wanted to be. So the movie Crybaby is basically based off of that guy. He knew nothing about him, so he just kind of made up a movie around him. Which sounds fun.
I vaguely remember watching that like forever ago, but vaguely. And I just remember it being ridiculous.
Really? I never saw it. I remember it was pretty popular in the video store I worked in. Like, it was one of those I saw on the shelf all the time. And it seemed like people rented it kind of often-ish. But yeah, I kind of want to watch it, just see what it's like.
Did you have a teardrop? Like,
yes. There was something about they can only cry out of one eye because there's something or another, or I'm not sure. I do know at this time Johnny Depp was all the rage in 21 Jump Street, but he was apparently getting sick of being the Hollywood heartthrob, and he was terrified of being typecast as just, the straight-laced heartthrob romance guy for teeny boppers. So when he was meeting with John Waters, he told John Waters this. He's like, dude, I am sick and tired of being the heartthrob. Can we do something else? And John was like, oh, we can kill that stereotype for you. You just wait and see. And apparently that kind of worked. Apparently that kind of worked too, because right after this movie, he got Edward Scissorhands from Tim Burton. Apparently, partly because of this role too, because Tim Burton's like, hey, this guy can apparently do some kind of weird stuff. And
that movie always kind of weirded me out. Edward Scissorhands. It's just, I don't know. Like, it was, I guess, fish out of water type story, but it was too weird. I mean, not like for me, not just like, oh, funny for you. Just there's too much logical fallacies. You start poking at it. It's like,
I really liked it, but yeah, I mean, there's logical fallacies.
I mean, it was enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. I did enjoy it. I don't know, the vibe always kind of like, meh.
Yeah. So one of those where the movie couldn't make up what it wanted to be in your mind, or?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Just I don't have a specific like. It's this. It's just.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, meh.
Around this time, John Waters became an ordained minister, so he could specifically marry Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder. But he actually talked them out of getting married. And instead, he used his ordained minister powers to baptize Tracy Lords, the porn star. Apparently, he wrote up a custom baptismal that would erase all the sin and porn that she did in her past. And he's like, I'm an ordained minister, so it obviously worked. God said so. Oh, and here's a gross side story from Crybabies. According to John Waters, during the shooting of that, women would randomly show up and offer to buy the sewage from his trailer. From Johnny Depp's trailer.
Oh God, that's
Yeah, I know. Yeah. This movie was a pretty successful movie at first for John Waters because of Hairspray's success. Studios got into a bidding war for this one. Everybody wanted to have the next John Waters movie, especially since it was a John Waters Johnny Depp combo. So it was the first time John Waters actually had a bidding war. People be like, "We want your movie." He's like, "Ooh, this is neat." And it opened in 1,200 theaters in its opening weekend, the largest showing ever of a John Waters film at the time. Sadly, it did not make back its budget. Only $8 million off of a $12 million budget. That's a flop in Hollywood eyes.
So which one was that? I'm sorry.
Crybaby.
Oh, really? Damn.
Yep. Yeah, that one was a flop. Again, when it came out on VHS,
VHS.
it became bigger again. Yep. It made more money out of VHS and stuff than it did in the theater.
Which they should have known. It's like he's never had a huge blockbuster in theaters.
Yep.
He's always big on VHS. So when they released the movie, it's like you can't surprise Pikachu face that it didn't make its money back. Yeah, no shit, it didn't make its money back. Neither did the other ones. You watch for the VHS.
Yep. I think Hairspray might have made its money back in theaters, but just barely. But I might be also wrong on that. Oh yeah. Also, Crybaby was also made into a Broadway play, much like Hairspray, but it flopped. And apparently that one kind of killed John's Broadway career too. Because they're like, "Hey, Hairspray was great, but Crybaby wasn't. You're off the no more."
Boo! One flop is all you get.
Yep, exactly. Also, I saw an interview in 1990 where John Waters plainly says that no, he has never practiced necrophilia yet in life. So we can assume if he's had So we can assume if he's had sex with the dead, it's after 1990, after middle-aged. So there you go. There's just food for thought. 1994 brought us what John Waters believes is actually his best movie, his best overall made movie, Serial Mom, starring Kathleen Turner. Have you seen that one?
No.
Okay. This is actually the only John Waters movie I saw before all this research.
I've seen the cover of the VHS.
There, she's holding like a pair of scissors and staring meanly at this. Yeah. Kathleen Turner plays a suburban housewife who has a secret life of being a serial killer. She basically, anybody who annoys her, she just runs around, kills them, and is able to get out of the murder somehow. John made this movie to show how much fun it would be to get away with murdering people who annoy you. And it came out to good reviews, but also did not make money. And here's kind of a story that sort of influenced John's idea of making a movie of people getting off of the act of doing crimes. He said when he was doing the trial tours in Baltimore, he attended a trial where a nurse was being charged with feeding patients fecal matter. Comatose patients. She'd just like stick a little fecal matter in their mouth and close it and go on her way. She went to trial. She got off on the grounds that she was PMSing during that time. And is apparently a free woman.
Dude.
Yeah. Apparently that was the trial where the lawyer turned around and was like, "Hey, John Waters is here. Neat." And then John ran into the dude sometime later. And the guy was like, "Oh, hey, you remember me from the trial?" And John's like, "Not really." And the guy's like, fecal matter in mouths. And John's like, "Oh, that one lady. Hey, how's she doing?" And then the lawyer got all upset because he was like, "I wasn't a fan of hers." John was all excited to know what she was up to. Yeah, apparently that disgusted the lawyer. We're going to step away from movies for just a hot second because in 1997, his most iconic role to me anyways, where he plays the toy store owner in Homer's Phobia, the Simpsons episode. Everybody knows this episode. Zap. I love this episode. Homer thinks Bart's turning gay, so he takes them all to the straightest things to do. Yep. And yeah, it's like, "Dad, why'd you take me to a gay steel mill?" "I don't know, son." Or it's like puts him in front of that billboard where there's two women having a pillow fight. "What do you want, son?" "A cigarette. Anything light." John actually had no input or anything on the script. They just called him up and said, "Hey, do you want to do this role?" And he said, "I would love to." And he said he had a wonderful time making it and said it was kind of like doing an old school radio thing because they're all just sitting around a table, reading lines into microphones and having an enjoyable time. Took a couple of days to do, and people love him for it, and he loves it. And I would probably actually, honestly, for at least myself, maybe top 5 or 10 Simpsons episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it.
Yeah, I really liked it too.
We work hard and we play hard.
Yeah, exactly. Edward Furlong, remember him? And Christina Ricci star in 1998's Pecker, where Edward Furlong plays 18-year-old Pecker, an aspiring photographer who gets his big break in New York City. Also a new movie I haven't seen, but supposedly pretty good.
Pecker.
What?
I mean,
What?
who would? I mean, at this, I mean, I know once upon a time, Pecker was not, what it means now, but it does mean what it means now. And I think if I had a name like Pecker, I would change it.
Yeah, you would think so. I think Pecker was his nickname because he pecked at food. However, John did have to fight with the censors because they didn't want the name Pecker on a marquee because it also means a dong. John had to actually go argue with him and fight over it, but he was like, well, we got movies called Shaft and Free Willy and Dick. What more do you want? And they're like, good point. That was the point of Peck. People don't yell Pecker in anger usually. You dumb Pecker.
Shaft, Free Willy.
Yeah, Shaft.
Harder Daddy.
Yeah, right. So he got to win that and got to call it Pecker. Once a couple fun side stories from this movie. Early on in the scene, there's a picture or a scene of Pecker taking a picture of two rats humping. Now, I guess John Waters obeyed all the rules and hired an animal trainer. Who's like, I want you to get these rats to have sex on command. So after a long, long while, the trainer wasn't able to actually get it to do it for the scene, and they're running out of time. So the prop master threw up his hands in disgust. He's like, let me handle this. And he's just like barely off scene with his hands, and he just literally grabbed the two rats with his hands, just like wham, 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 wham. So you get that awkward scene at the start. Yeah.
If they're not going to have sex, I'll make them have sex.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, John said if you ever want to get animals to have sex, it's really easy to get them to do oral sex. You just use peanut butter. But to get them to actually do sex, it's really hard. Unless you got Divine rolling around in the mud. Then it happens naturally. This is the movie where teabagging was invented. Did you know that? John Waters invented teabagging. And the game of Halo would be changed forever.
Which movie?
Pecker.
Oh, okay.
Teabagging comes from Pecker.
I thought you moved on to another movie.
Nope, we're still on Pecker.
How is I mean, whatever. I'm not going to ask.
You do know what teabagging is, right?
Of course I know what teabagging is.
Okay,
I just didn't know how they introduced this to the movie, because surely they didn't show the full thing. Or just someone would just randomly go, oh, teabag. And
actually, I have no idea how it comes about in this movie, but maybe we should watch it one of these days.
Nope.
No, you're like, yeah, I'll be good. Apparently, this is actually one of John's tamer movies because he calls it his feel-good movie. However, the Japan Times called it Disney for perverts.
Well, I mean, Disney, feel good.
Yeah, and for perverts, John Waters. So there you go. This movie kind of came about because in the 90s, John did start getting into photographic-based art. And some of it's actually pretty good. I really like it. Do things where he combines two pictures into one, like a half and half, sort of like a two-face kind of thing. It's better. It's some of the better photography art, unlike the stuff you were talking about. And a fun story along that lines. He pledged to donate much of his art collection to the Baltimore Museum, only in exchange if they named their bathrooms after him. They did. And now there's the John Waters all genders restroom at the Baltimore Museum.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. He loves Baltimore because he's basically royalty there. That's why he always releases his movies there first, because it's always good word of mouth. People are like, John Waters, that's our boy. We love him. He can't do anything wrong. For the new millennium, John brings us the movie Cecil B. Demented, which I watched this one actually the other day. This movie stars Melanie Griffith playing an actress who gets kidnapped by terrorist filmmakers led by Stephen Dorff, who force her to perform in an underground movie. Okay, here's a dumb Sean fact. Whenever I hear the name Stephen Dorff, I think of Worf from Star Trek, and then I think of Michael Dorn, so every time I hear the name Stephen Dorff, I picture Michael Dorn in my head, and that's very confusing for me. Because, Dorff and Dorn are kind of close, and Dorff and Worf are kind of in the middle, and yeah, I'm not...
I was thinking the golfer.
Golfer?
Yeah.
Stephen Dorff, the golfer? Oh, Dorff on golf.
No,
yeah,
Stephen Dorff.
Okay. Yeah. So now I'm picturing a dwarf Worf. Oh, wow.
Worf, with on his knees with the shoes.
Played by Tim Conway as a...
Right, exactly. Must be Tim Conway in, Worf makeup. That's exactly right.
Man, we got to see that sometime in our life. Worf on golf. So anyways, this movie, Cecil B. Demented, is based loosely on two events. One, the kidnapping of Patty Hearst, who also actually acts in this movie. And an incident that John Waters talked about were a magazine called Film Threat Magazine, run by Larry Flint, made a joke saying maybe their readers should attack the readers of Premiere Magazine should they find them. And apparently some of the readers actually did attack the readers of Premiere Magazine, and Film Threat Magazine had to post a retraction because of this.
Because they put a hit out.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they were quote-unquote jokingly doing it, but people took it seriously.
Oh, man. They should know by now. People don't have any sense of humor.
You'd think so. But nah. They also probably like the free publicity a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's...
yeah, totally.
So there's a militant film crew that kidnaps Melanie Griffith during this, and man, they kind of feel like an analog to the Dreamlanders. Even to the point where one dude gets shot in it and he's laying there dying. He's like, poppers, bring me poppers. And he starts inhaling them while he's dying. So, yeah. However, John Waters does say he is not Cecil B. Demented because he has a sense of humor. Cecil B. Demented does not. And along these lines, too, in a 2016 interview, John Waters did tell Conan O'Brien he planned on recreating Cecil B. Demented, but by kidnapping Justin Bieber and forcing him into movie acting. He never got around to enacting that plan, but he thought about it very, very hard.
That's all it takes. Thinking.
Yeah, all it takes thinking very hard. We are at the very late 90s now, and John Waters gets a call from Margot Lyon, a famous Broadway music producer. She wants to do Hairspray the musical, but is doing the good thing and wants to get John's blessing first. He gives a blessing, and then she goes to the studio to secure the rights. After a short test run at Seattle's Fifth Avenue Broadway, the show is released in 2002 to huge success. Over 2,640 shows of the play were done, and it earned him a Tony. And then, it basically got made into a...
What was Tony's last name? Earned him a Tony. Yeah. Tony was great.
And then this movie went on to go into high school plays everywhere, and like you said, drag his message of deviancy all around the nation for himself. Yay!
And then eventually remade with John Travolta as the mom.
Yep, that was actually Divine's role. And I'm glad you brought that up because people asked John Waters what would Divine done if the movie, if he was still alive when Hairspray was being made. And he said he would have absolutely wanted to play the mom. He would have been right there for the role, and he would have wanted to fight John Travolta every inch of the way because he really liked to act. And also, they asked John Waters regarding Divine what he thinks Divine would be doing nowadays, and he plainly said he would have given up the drag act by now because apparently, the whole drag costume was eventually more or less just a way to get noticed and famous to get into movies, but he really wasn't that big into drag because, the outfits were uncomfortable and the wigs were hot. Apparently, you make your fake boobs out of lentils, and those get really heavy on your chest.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad he never got out of that. I mean...
Yeah, it would have been nice, because the things I've seen, it seemed like he could have been a pretty good actor overall in the long run,
I mean, he was definitely a method actor. He took that role and ran with it. I mean, he ate
dog shit. He ate dog shit. That's something I wouldn't do for a movie.
No, fuck that. Like, they're like, okay, here's a role, by the way, to get this role, we need your commitment. You're eating dog shit. Like, no.
Yeah. At least John said on that, he did give Divine the option to back out. He was like, I'm not going to make you do this, but it'd be nice if you could. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we were talking about earlier, John Waters hadn't had a box office success since Hairspray, and basically all his movies, except for Hairspray, more or less were a bomb. And this streak would sadly continue with 2004 when he released A Dirty Shame starring Tracy Ullman, Johnny Knoxville, and Selma Blair, the movie I didn't even know existed. This movie, the reason nobody really heard about is it got the kiss of death for a movie. It was branded NC-17. And as you probably know, working in theaters, a lot of theaters refuse to show NC-17 stuff. Actually, a lot of video stores won't rent it either.
Yeah, no, NC-17 is like definitely the kiss of death, as they say.
Yep. John actually appealed to the MPAA, being like, hey, man, I can't have this NC-17 rating. They're expecting this to make money. My name's kind of on the line. What can we do to change it? And the board famously answered, we stopped taking in notes. It was that bad, I guess. Well, yeah. Well, apparently at one point they filled up the entire town with like giant inflatable anuses and penises everywhere for like somebody's hallucination scene. And John was actually very nervous about this because they picked a blue-collar kind of conservative middle-class town neighborhood in Baltimore to film it. He was like, how are these people going to feel about that? How are they going to react? He was shocked to see the families like gathering around taking pictures next to the giant inflatable anuses with their family and kids. Hey, Junior, pose with the giant penis John Waters put up. He was like, that's unexpected. Also, this is a movie where John and I learned that there can be very different rating standards depending on where you are in the country. Depending on, for the commercials they wanted to air, they had, there's a part of the movie where they had Selma Blair's breasts get like really big, like abnormally big. And according to the MPAA, if they wanted to show commercials for this on the coast, the East Coast and the West Coast, for the commercials, they did not care how big the breasts were. You could do whatever size you want. In the Midwest, they had to shrink them down noticeably. And to actually get the commercial shown in Utah, they couldn't even do the breast enlarging thing at all. And they had to be like natural sized breasts. So there you go. There's different censorship for different parts of the country. Yay. So A Dirty Shame came about when John learned that apparently if people can become nymphomaniacs after suffering a serious concussion. And that's basically what the movie's about. People, I think it's Johnny Knoxville gets a concussion and gets really horny. But
is that
Johnny Dirty Shame.
Oh,
Johnny Knoxville, not
Dirty Shame.
not
okay.
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. Okay, I'm back.
See, but what we're learning from this is there's too many actors named Johnny. We need to eliminate a few.
Right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. It's just concussions and people getting horny. But since the NC-17 rating, it only made back $1.3 million off of a rumored $15 million budget. That's not good. Not good at all.
That is no bueno.
Here's another random John Waters story. This one's something else. Being a man of filth that he is, fans often want to go the extra mile to show him how filthy they are and, one-up him. At a book signing, a woman walked up to him, asked, "Hey, will you sign anything?" He says, "Yep." So she whips up her skirt and pulls out a tampon out from inside of her, plops it down on the table and says, "Sign that." John was like, "Well, this is disgusting, but I said I'll sign anything." So he gingerly signs it without touching it. Gives it back to the lady. She's all excited and happy. But John said the funniest part of this whole instance was the bookstore actually assigned him just this giant, massive African-American bodyguard to protect him for whatever reason. He's not sure why. When this situation happened, because the big black dude was so uptight, he just started crying when that happened. He's like, "I don't know why they're doing this," because he just felt so.
He wasn't laughing till he was crying. He was
he was literally crying because he felt so awkward and weird. He thought this was the creepiest thing ever. He's just like, "Why are they doing this?" Yep, just broke down crying. Yeah, that's got to be something you're not expecting, though. Hey, you're going to be having this job help watching somebody while he signs books. Oh, signing books, huh? Lady walks up. "Here, sign this." Plop. Because it's not like it was a brand new one out of the package either. It was inside of her. 2008. Yeah, right. 2008. John Waters is making a Christmas movie with Parker Posey and Johnny Knoxville titled Fruitcake. However, this movie never got past pre-production as the company financing it went out of business. John said this was really bummer because he was looking forward to it as making his first Christmas movie. He said about this, when I realized my movie idea had been aborted, I suddenly became pro-life in just this one instance. Just that one time. Oh, and here's some random advice from John Waters as well. Never, ever, 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 ever let a film crew shoot in your house because they will literally destroy your house. They want to knock down a wall, they'll do it. They'll punch a hole anywhere. They'll destroy anything they want. Tear down your banister, wreck your stairs. Yep, they'll do it. Simpsons kind of did an episode on this too. So apparently they do pay you money to use your house, but it's never enough to cover the damages. Another fun fact about John, if you ever want to get a message to him, he's not on social media. So listeners, if you think you're talking to him on social media through Facebook, Instagram, whatnot, nope, that's not him. The only way to get a hold of him is by writing him a letter, and you have to send his fan mail to a bookstore called Atomic Books. You can look it up on their website. It actually has a page that's like, John Waters asked us to send all his fan mail here. He doesn't come in and pick it up every day, but he comes in here pretty often. So there you go. Handwrite him a letter. Or hand type, I guess. Kind of weird to have your stuff shipped to a bookstore. I wonder how much he actually gets. That's like annoying for the bookstore or not.
I don't know. I would think it'd be enough that it might be like irritating because, John Waters is, he's not a nobody.
Yeah, he's got fans all over the world.
I mean, he's not a fucking...
Yeah, he's not Steven Spielberg. We were thinking the same guy. What's the biggest director name we can think of? But then again, I don't know. John Waters might have a more rabid following just for his concentrated base of guys. Probably not. Oh, I bet. Yeah, probably not a lot of people pulling out tampons for Steven Spielberg. 2012 comes along, and the 66-year-old decides it's time to hitchhike across the country and write a book about the experience. This book would be called Car Sick. Because this came about because John remembers in his youth how hitchhiking was literally a legitimate form of transportation. If you wanted to get somewhere, didn't have a car, just pop out on the road, hitchhike, and make your way across the country wherever you needed to. And he noticed hitchhiking culture is dead nowadays. The only people that ever hitchhike, he says, are over the age of 50, and they don't do it anymore, and nobody under the age of 50 has ever hitchhiked. Which, that is actually kind of accurate-ish. At least the vast majority of people I know under the age of 50 have not hitchhiked.
Who hitchhikes? Who does that?
John Waters does. Because he wanted to see if it's a feasible thing to do. Thing is, he started telling his family and friends about the idea, and they all told him it's a horrible idea, and he will disappear and get murdered. Without a doubt, everybody believed he was going to get killed on it. And the people that absolutely pushed back the most on him told him, do not do this, his criminal friends. Everybody in the prison system was like, you're going to die. We are criminals. We know what happens to hitchhikers. Naturally, this made John Waters want to do it even more. So, sporting a sign stating, I am not a psycho, he departed on his venture from his home in Baltimore to his apartment in San Francisco, hitchhiking the entire way. Took him 21 rides to get across country. Although one conservative politician did drive him 1,000 miles in his Corvette, so that kind of helped things. Apparently they got they got along so well that they just kept talking and kept driving. The politician actually dropped John Waters off, went home, and then decided he wanted to hang out with John Waters more, so caught up with him down the road in Colorado or something, drove him all the way to San Francisco. John Waters says he's the only Republican he would ever vote for.
There you go.
Apparently, John Waters said that the guy was conservative, but he was also kind of open-minded, and they actually had really good conversations and agreed with each other on some things. 2014, that book does officially get released, and he wins an Emmy for his spoken word version of Carsick, which I've heard is a really good book too, by the way. If you ever want to pick up a good John Waters book,
I'll check it out.
2016 rolls around, and for his 70th birthday, him and fellow Dreamlander original Mink Stoll decide to take LSD for the first time since the 70s and have a blast. He recommends old LSD for old people. He says it's even better when you're old. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, maybe when you're 70, you can take it again. In 2022, we're actually getting up towards the end now. 2022, John Waters releases a book called Liarmouth, a feel-bad romance novel, which is described as a hilariously filthy tale of sex, crime, and family dysfunction. Or another description I found which is a little better. Liarmouth is about 3 generations of women in one family who plan to confront or kill one another. It also has a trampoline fun park. I kind of want to know about the trampoline fun park. Book came out to great reviews. Everybody loves it, and it has been optioned for a movie. And yes, John Waters will be directing it. He is going to come back to the big screen to direct his book. And as far as the ETA, it's anybody's guess at this point. I think it literally got optioned like late 2022, so it's probably...
The trampoline fun parks, I think we have those here.
Trampoline fun park. Oh yeah, I'm sure they do everywhere. I think they have them up here too.
Oh yeah, like they're indoor things that like I think it was like Defy and there was some other thing. Now they have it called something else.
It's not a trampoline fun park through the mind of John Waters.
It is not not John Waters. I will say though, like I was like, oh, it sounds fun, yay, trampoline fun park, and then I realized I'm 44 years old and I'm gonna throw up. This is not fun. But that was the one time I did. Like the kids, of course, they love it.
Yeah, but once you get to a certain age, you're like, this isn't for me anymore.
No, God,
actually,
no.
Since you bring up trampoline, it's kind of funny because, what was it? I believe his Hairspray had some trampoline scenes, and apparently Divine was so into actually doing those and not having a stuntman. Divine signed up for like professional trampoline training classes, and actually apparently got really good on the trampoline. You know, doing the whole backflips, flipping around, twirling. Yeah,
nice.
Some dedication to the acting. Let's see. We're just about done. I'll give you one piece of advice from John Waters here. He says, want to be a political activist? He recommends not going the angry route. You're supposed to go the humorous route. Embarrass your opponents and make them look like fools. But he also says, first, make fun of yourself a little bit. That way it doesn't seem like you're bullying them. Says humor works better in his anger. And he likes to point to, he says the only group that he ever really sees that uses humor really well and sarcasm, he likes the modern day Satanic Temple and like the tweets they do and stuff and their way they just kind of mock conservatives. Have you ever read the Satanic Temple tweets and some of their releases?
I haven't. No, I don't have
Twitter. They also do. You see them on Facebook here and there. It's pretty smarky, fun stuff. It's things that make you go, hey, that's funny and it's true. Yeah, I'll send you some tweets later. They're worth it. And to close out the final thing, here's a movie John Waters really wants to make if he could ever get financing for it, which he probably won't. It's a simple thing, but I would love to watch this movie. He wants to call it Manger Mania, where Mother Mary gives the virgin birth to little baby Jesus fetus, but instead of raising him, she promptly eats the baby and then gains his powers and miracles and heads out to punish sinners.
Well, that exists.
Yeah, it's an idea that exists. It's not a movie that's been made yet, but I would kind of like to see that. I don't know why. Just Mary, I don't know, doing horrible things to Pontius Pilate or something. Or it turns all his blood into wine. I mean, that'd probably kill you pretty fast.
I'd kill you right away.
So, there we go. We are actually done with John Waters. Did you learn anything today, Nate?
I did. Yeah,
me too.
I realized I could actually get like sick when hearing about something. I thought I was pretty immune to that, but hearing about dog pooping, man.
Especially when you think about the fact that it's straight out of the dog and warm and everything. That's what really makes it like.
Oh man, that's just awful. Like
even when I was watching, I did a couple of those like kind of things because it's hard to watch, especially when you see the look on Divine's face because you can tell that not a fan of eating it, but boy howdy, he's a trooper.
Oh God, this is awful.
It's awful. So now you at home listening, you know more about John Waters too. Check out some of his movies. Help him make some money. Help him continue being the weirdo that he is. Spread the word of the Pope of Trash. All right, so I think that's all for today. Yay, we're all done. All right, and now let's do our cheesy little ending theme song and call it good. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.